Today we are looking at two of the creepier stories that have taken hold of the horror community. Skinwalker Ranch and The Watcher House. But which one is creepier? While both stories are distinct, their similarities are deeply creepy. Utah's Skinwalker Ranch and New Jersey's 657 Boulevard were meant to be fresh starts for their newest residents. The enterprising Sherman family was looking forward to rearing their cherished herd of cattle on their ranch, while Derek and Maria Brodus were eager to settle into their large suburban home for a peaceful, wholesome life with their 3 young children. Both families would soon be completely unraveled by the sinister forces rapidly encroaching upon their properties. When one's home is breached, any sense of security disappears. But when you have no idea what is threatening you from the shadows or how to make it stop, what do you do? The stories of each family being stalked by something frightening are both true and currently unsolved. What we do know about what happened to each family continues to puzzle and horrify. The desolate ranchlands welcomed the Sherman family with an unnerving and mysterious omen. The previous owner of the ranch implored them to never dig into the ground, and they found many of the doors and windows inside of the home padlocked without explanation. Stranger still, while the family was unloading their belongings into their new home, an unnaturally large wolf with bright yellow eyes slowly approached them. Unlike other wild animals seen in the area, this beast seemed to be unafraid of the humans. Although the encounter was tense, the family felt the wolf was probably more curious than hungry for human flesh. Then, without hesitation or warning, the wolf lunged for a nearby calf that had been sticking its head in between the fencing, clenching its jaw firmly around the unfortunate calf's head. Mr. Sherman reacted at once, unholstering his revolver and firing multiple times into the wolf at near point-blank range. The Shermans watched in horror and confusion as the enormous wolf simply shrugged off the bullets and walked away, seemingly unscathed, perhaps to revisit the Sherman family again after watching and studying them from afar. The first days of Derek and Maria Brodus' ownership of 657 Boulevard were met by a similarly unsettling episode. One evening, as Derek Brodus was fetching his daily mail, one card-shaped envelope stuck out among the usual forwarded bills and change of address forms. There was no return address, simply a neatly typed letter within. The letter spoke to Derek and Maria directly.
Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out.
The author of the letter had clearly seen the family moving in, as chilling details of the family followed.
You have children. I have seen them. So far, I think there are 3 that I have counted. Do you need to fill the house with the young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to 4 children. Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me.
The letter was plainly and unhelpfully signed, The Watcher. Was this Watcher character a serious threat to the family? Or perhaps a tasteless prank orchestrated by bored, albeit harmless, teenagers? Westfield, New Jersey was supposed to be a safe haven from these sorts of antics. So what exactly had the family moved into, they wondered. The Broadduses immediately brought the Watcher's unsettling letter to the police. The details in the letter suggested it was written by someone within the same neighborhood, but there was nothing that could be done without hard, conclusive evidence. Apparently, the previous owners of the home told the Broadduses that they had received a similar letter days before they themselves moved out. With all of the answers to their questions eluding them, they would have to settle with writing off the incident as a one-off fluke and proceeding with their planned renovations of 657 Boulevard. Little did they know, like the Sherman family's ranch, their new home was now under constant surveillance from an unidentified and unwelcoming entity whose torment would drive the family into paranoia, obsession, and the brink of madness. In Utah, the threat to the Shermans did not remain peaceful for long. The family had moved to the ranch specifically to raise their cattle, but over the next 2 years, the family would lose 20% of its herd to unnatural deaths, including inexplicable cattle mutilations. One spring day, the Sherman's eldest son was inspecting the property following a storm. As he reached a ditch, he found one of the ranch's cows stuck in the mud below. The cow seemed to not be in distress, so he decided to go about the rest of his inspection before returning to help the stranded beast. What he found in the ditch mere moments later would haunt him and the rest of the family for the rest of their lives. The cow had been cut in half around its torso, with its back half completely missing. The cut was clean, as if the poor beast was dissected surgically and deliberately. Stranger still, the remaining front half of the cow seemed to be drained of all of its blood. The Shermans would go on to report finding identical victims 3 more times. Other cattle were routinely found dead on the ranch, usually with a punctured left eye and missing organs, as if they had been specifically removed by an unknown presence. Unfortunately, the unexplained violence did not end there. In another paranormal episode, Mr. Sherman claims to have been on his front porch when he noticed a bright blue orb of light zigzagging through the air. As he reached for his rifle, the 3 family dogs also noticed the rapidly approaching object, barging through the porch's screen door and bounding away towards the orb to give chase. The orb seemed to react to the barking dogs and veered off to retreat behind the tree line across the property. Mr. Sherman followed, desperate to retrieve his hounds and find answers to the strange phenomenon. However, before he could reach the tree line, the excited barking stopped. His stomach sank as he rushed through the thicket where the dogs had been barking, only to find all 3 dogs slaughtered in the dirt. Rifle still in hand, Mr. Sherman scanned the wilderness enveloping him. The blue orb was nowhere to be seen. 657 Boulevard continued to be a blight on the lives of Derek and Maria Broaddus, who continued receiving the Watcher's letters. While the Watcher possessed a clear obsession with Derek and Maria's 3 children and their so-called young blood, the ongoing renovations to the house seemed to be the Watcher's primary source of frustration with the family, as detailed in even more letters.
657 Boulevard is turning on me. It is coming after me. I don't understand why. What spell did you cast on it? It used to be my friend, and now it is my enemy. I am in charge of 657 Boulevard. It is not in charge of me. I will fend off its bad things and wait for it to become good again. It will not punish me. I will rise again. I will be patient and wait for this to pass and for you to bring the young blood back to me. 657 Boulevard needs young blood. It needs you. Come back. Let the young blood play again like I once did. Let the young blood sleep in 657 Boulevard. Stop changing it and let it alone.
The Watcher's barrage of antagonizing threats culminated in a living hell for the Brutuses. Derek and Maria were constantly at each other's throats while trying their best to insulate their children from the terrifying details of the whole ordeal during the day and depending on pills to fall asleep at night. Derek decided to forego work trips so he could personally protect the house as much as possible, repeatedly searching the rooms and halls for any potential points of intrusion. Maria was suffering from vivid nightmares of a shadowy intruder taking the children away under the cover of darkness. The trauma instilled by the Watcher's angry letters was unrelenting. Despite their growing financial woes, the family was undeterred from spending money on protection. They invested in a new alarm system. Maria bought smartphones for the children so she could keep a constant eye on their movements while the kids were out swimming with friends. Derek put out an ad offering to hire retired veterans as private security. As each and every neighbor was seen as a potential suspect, the family went so far as to hire a private detective to independently investigate the neighbors they suspected the most, and even obtain background checks on the other families. Spurred by the news of the police department's fruitless investigation, word got out that the Brutus home was involved in something deeply strange, perhaps even dangerous. Had they brought something sinister into this idyllic little town? And so, the press eventually set up news vans along the street, hoping to catch interviews with members of the family, or even a glimpse of the Watcher rumored to be prowling the neighborhood. Almost immediately after the family failed to petition the Westfield Planning Board to tear down the house and end their torment once and for all, the Watcher sent yet another letter addressed to Derek and Maria.
You wonder who the Watcher is? Turn around, idiots. Maybe you even spoke to me, one of the so-called neighbors who has no idea who the Watcher could be. Or maybe you do know and are too scared to tell anyone. Good move. I walked by the news trucks when they took over my neighborhood and mocked me. I watched as you watched from the dark house in an attempt to find me. Telescopes and binoculars are wonderful inventions. 657 Boulevard survived your attempted assault and stood strong with its army of supporters barricading its gates. My soldiers of the Boulevard followed my orders to a T. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher.
The letter's contents grew wilder, with the Watcher openly musing on the violence that could befall the family should they continue meddling with their home.
Maybe a car accident, maybe a fire, maybe something as simple as a mild illness that never seems to go away but makes you feel sick day after after day after day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet. Loved ones suddenly die. Planes and cars and bicycles crash. Bones break.
Eager to preserve their safety and sanity, the Sherman family eventually sold their beloved Utah ranch at a tremendous financial loss. Likewise, many costly attempts at identifying the Watcher had financially imperiled Derek and Maria. Desperate to finally create some semblance of a safe life for their children, they too finally sold the house at a loss and downsized to another home across town, praying the Watcher's menacing influence would be left in the neighborhood far behind. However, the stories of Skinwalker Ranch and 657 Boulevard do not end with each family's exodus from their properties. The stories of Skinwalker Ranch had permeated the surrounding community and beyond. A billionaire land developer scooped up the cheaply listed ranch land and proceeded to research the Shermans' otherworldly claims with a more scientific approach by hiring experts with modern techniques and equipment. These experts would go on to claim they had witnessed even more inexplicable incidents, including glowing orbs, flashing lights in the sky, and in one case, even a portal to another place and time opening to release an unidentified creature into the dark Utah desert. In a thorough interview with The Cut that was the basis for the Netflix adaptation, Derek Brodus admits to writing the final letter, supposedly authored by the Watcher, and distributing it to several of his previous neighbors. The recipients of this final letter all happened to be the neighbors most determined to see the family leave. However, Derek maintains that all previous letters were truly authentic. Could this revelation be a half-measure confession to orchestrating the whole ordeal? But to what end? Were the Broduses so financially strained that they'd pull an elaborate, ongoing stunt to get out of committing to a house with an overwhelming mortgage and more than $100,000 in property taxes? Or was Derek a true victim all along, as he had maintained, who simply sought to exact a small revenge on the neighbors he suspected most of terrorizing his family for months on end? In the opinion of your humble narrator, the danger these families endured was very real indeed. However, the story of the Watcher's unceasing harassment of the Brodus family is especially chilling, as the Watcher's letters could have been sent to any one of us. We all have neighbors and acquaintances we don't understand as well as we would like. The Watcher could be anyone in any neighborhood, even your own. Terror is truly in the eye of the beholder, and that we may never know what or who was harassing these families. That is perhaps what is most frightening of all. What do you think was behind the disturbing incidents in each house? And which is the house you would rather never step foot in?